The Daily Code Snippet. This past week we discussed the difference between display none and visibility hidden before we took a deep dive into the border property. When display is set to none, you will hide an element. Visibility set to hidden will also hide the element, while visibility set to visible will show the element. The difference between visibility and display is whether a space is left where the element would have been. If you prefer a blank space not to appear, then you should use display set to none. If you prefer there to be a placeholder space to be visible to indicate something could be there but isn't shown, then you would use visibility set to hidden. With both display and visibility, the user can still see the hidden content by viewing the source code in the browser. Here is the code. The HTML is at the top and our two CSS options are below. We added a class attribute to the third list element and called it coming soon. So a period before the name, li.coming-soon, will target the element. Adding the li makes your selector more specific, so it targets only list elements with that class. In the first option, we are using visibility hidden, while in the second option, we are using display none. In this image, we see that visibility hidden causes the third list element in our navigation services to no longer be displayed. However, there is a space where a button would be. In contrast, when we use display none, the third list element is skipped and no placeholder space is left. Moving on to borders, we have talked about borders in the context of the box model and how it relates to margin and padding. But to add a visible border to an element, we use the border property. The browser needs to know how wide your border is, the style of your border, and the color of your border. So there are three separate properties: border width, border style, and border color. There is a shorthand that combines all three for the border property. It is appropriate when you want all three properties the same all around the element. Border, border width, border style, border color. Border, 1 pixel, solid. Hashtag 000,000, semicolon. We need to specify the width first, then the style, and finally color. The second declaration states that we want a 1 pixel solid black border all around our element. Border width also has these values that are recognized: thin, medium, and thick. Medium is the default. With border style, there are many options: dotted, dashed, solid, double, groove, ridge, inset, outset, none, and hidden. The border color property sets the color. In our demo, we used a hexadecimal code to specify the color black. However, there are many ways to define color when coding. If you don't want the same width, style, or color border all around, you cannot use the shorthand. Instead, you need to specify the border width, border style, and border color separately, and you can name up to 4 values. Just like with margin and padding, we follow the same convention of clockwise from the top. So top, right, border, and left. But if we don't provide 4 values, we have to know how the CSS is read. With 4 values, the top border is 20 pixels, the right border is medium, the bottom border is thin, and the left border is 5 pixels. With 3 values, the top border is thick, the right and left borders are 10 pixels, and the bottom border is thin. With 2 values, the top and bottom borders are thick, while the right and left borders are thin. With 1 value, all borders are medium. For border style, and later for border color, the same convention is followed as for border width. Next, if you wanted to target only one side of an element, you can use border top, border right, border bottom, and border left. The shorthand we use when targeting all 4 sides is the same when targeting just one side: border bottom, border width, border style, and border color. Border bottom, medium, dashed red. This example states that the bottom border of an element should be medium width, dashed style, and red in color. Finally, you can also just target the border width, border style, or border color of a particular side of an element. In this case, you would write border top width, 10 pixels, border right width, 10 pixels, border bottom width, 10 pixels, border left width, 10 pixels. Similarly, border top style dotted, border right style dotted, border bottom style dotted, border left style dotted. And finally, border top color blue, border right color blue, border bottom color blue, border left color blue. We will take a look at some examples so that you can understand the use of borders and see how some of the styles appear. Note we are using exaggerated border width sizes so that it is easier to differentiate the border styles. Let's look first at the shorthand in a situation where we want all the borders the same. To look at the different border options, we have set up a page where we have 8 different squares. Each square has a different border style, and as stated previously, we have used an exaggerated border width, so it is easier to see how they are different. In these examples, we have also chosen a dark blue border to contrast the light blue background. Here is the CSS code targeting each square to make them a uniform size, 200 pixels by 200 pixels. Each square is floating to the left, which is why they are arranged in 2 rows of 4 squares. We have used padding to have some space between the placeholder text and the border. We have used margin to space each square from its neighbors. By stating margin first, affecting all 4 sides, and then margin left afterwards, we are taking advantage of the cascading, which we will explain more fully later. Essentially, the margin left of 0 after the margin of 15 pixels means that the margin left will override the value of margin for the left border. We do this so that the box is aligned to the left of our web page. And finally, we chose a light blue for our background color. Here are our squares again. Looking at the CSS for the first 2 squares, we are showing the shorthand where we specify the width of 15 pixels first, the border style, and then the border color in a hexadecimal code. The first square has a solid border while the second has a dashed border. Now we see the code for the third square with a dotted border and the fourth square with a double border. The fifth and sixth squares are in the lower row and feature a grooved and ridged border. And finally, the 7th and 8th square feature an inset and an outset border. These images just show the grooved versus ridged, and the inset versus outset borders at a larger size for you to see the differences. Now we move to using different values for the border width, border style, and border color on each side of the element. We will look at the CSS code first. In this case, we are looking at different border widths all around our element with 20 pixels at the top, thick to the right, medium to the bottom, and thin to the left. Our border is solid, with the same blue color as previous. This is how it would look. Take note of how the default styles of thick, medium, and thin display. In this example, we are keeping the border width the same as thick and the same blue color for our border, but instead we are changing the border style from dashed at the top and clockwise to dotted, double, and finally solid. This is how it would look. Next, we hold our border width steady at 20 pixels and our border style as double all around. But now we are changing our border color from our dark blue and shifting into purple, violet, and magenta. This is how this code would display visually. In our final example, we show how to use the shorthand to target only one side. In this case, we are giving our top border a 20 pixel wide border that is solid and a magenta color. Our right border is 8 pixels dashed with a violet color, and our bottom border is double and a purple color. And finally, our left border is 3 pixels, dotted, and blue in color. This is how this would display. Presented by Designers Learn Code.